Have you ever wondered how invisible enemies, smaller than a grain of sand, have rewritten the course of human history? How entire cities, empires, and civilizations could crumble under the quiet, relentless assault of something you couldn't see, hear, or fight in the conventional sense? Imagine waking up one morning, and by nightfall, the streets are empty, the markets abandoned, and the laughter of children replaced by the haunting silence of fear. These are not stories of war or conquest. These are stories of plagues, the deadliest plagues humanity has ever faced. And today, we dive into the invisible forces that reshaped our world. But first, I want you to think. If a disease could erase millions in a single season, how prepared would you be? Leave a comment below with the plague you think was the most terrifying, and why. Let's journey into history's most lethal encounters. Long before antibiotics, vaccines, or even a basic understanding of germs, human beings faced an enemy that required neither strategy nor weapon: the microbial assassins of our past. Our story begins in the dusty corridors of ancient civilizations, where the first whispers of epidemic were recorded in cuneiform tablets and scrolls, hinting at a terror the ancients could not understand, only endure. Consider the plague of Justinian in 541 AD, which many historians say claimed the lives of 25 to 50 million people across the Byzantine Empire. Imagine Constantinople, a bustling hub of trade, suddenly gripped by an invisible predator. Ships arrived at the harbor, their crews sick or dead, carrying rats infected with the Yersinia pestis bacterium, the same deadly pathogen that would resurface centuries later as the infamous Black Death. In the crowded streets, citizens died by the thousands, often before anyone even realized what was happening. Buildings once alive with commerce fell silent, and the emperor himself watched helplessly as his empire's wealth and military might were drained by a microscopic killer. Some estimates suggest that this plague killed nearly half of the empire's population, altering the trajectory of European history. The ripple effects? Labor shortages that reshaped economies, weakened armies that allowed invasions, and a society forced to confront mortality on a scale it had never seen before. And speaking of the Black Death, let's fast forward to the 14th century, when Europe faced a horror that would become infamous in folklore, art, and collective memory. Between 1347 and 1351, the Black Death killed an estimated 75 to 200 million people worldwide. Imagine walking through the streets of Florence or Paris and seeing black boils, swollen lymph nodes, and bodies being dumped into mass graves daily. Entire villages disappeared. People believed the end of the world had come, with some attributing the plague to divine wrath, others to poisons in the air, and yet some pointing fingers at the marginalized, the innocent, or the misunderstood. But the plague didn't discriminate. Kings and peasants, merchants and monks, all were equally vulnerable. And here's a detail often overlooked. While today we might think of hygiene or sanitation as obvious solutions, medieval Europeans had no understanding of germs. Their efforts, fumigating streets, quarantining ships, or resorting to superstitious rituals, were often as deadly as they were futile. Yet plague has not been a purely European story. Asia, Africa, and the Americas faced horrors of their own. In the 6th century, the smallpox virus decimated populations in China and India, leaving survivors scarred and societies traumatized. Smallpox would later become the silent assassin of the New World after European colonization. When Hernán Cortés and other explorers arrived in the Americas, indigenous populations, with no immunity to Old World diseases, were annihilated in numbers historians can hardly fathom. Entire cities that had thrived for centuries were reduced to ruins, and cultural knowledge, languages, and traditions vanished almost overnight. Some estimates suggest that up to 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas was wiped out by smallpox and related diseases within decades. Imagine an entire civilization, once vibrant and thriving, erased not by war, but by a virus that traveled quietly with the wind in the ships. The story of the plagues isn't just about numbers. It's about human resilience, adaptation, and the way societies respond to existential threats. During the third cholera pandemic in the 19th century, which claimed over 1 million lives, cities began experimenting with sanitation and clean water systems. The deadly flu of 1918, often called the Spanish flu, infected an estimated 1/3 of the world's population and killed at least 50 million people. Yet from that devastation came advances in public health, epidemiology, and virology. Humanity learned, albeit painfully, that plagues were not just punishers but teachers. But let's pause for a moment and consider the human stories behind the statistics. Picture a mother in London during the Great Plague of 1665, clutching her children as the church bells toll for the dead, unsure if she will see the sunrise again. Imagine a trader in Bombay during the 1896 bubonic plague, desperately trying to keep his family alive while the city quarantines whole neighborhoods, burning belongings and forcing families into isolation. These plagues were not just numbers, they were heartbreak, desperation, and courage. There is also a strange, almost counterintuitive side to plagues. Some historians argue that these disasters have reshaped society in ways that ultimately strengthen humanity. Labor shortages after the Black Death gave peasants more bargaining power, accelerating the decline of feudalism. Survivors of epidemics often gained immunity, unknowingly preparing the next generation for similar threats. Even today, scientists study the genetic remnants of plague survivors, seeking clues about human resilience and vulnerability. Now you might wonder, what made these plagues so deadly? The answer is a terrifying combination of biology, environment, and human behavior. The bacteria, viruses, and pathogens that cause these diseases were astonishingly adaptive. Poor sanitation, urban crowding, trade routes, and ignorance about disease transmission created perfect conditions for an outbreak to explode. Ships carried rats, rats carried fleas, fleas carried plague, and humans unwittingly carried the disease further than anyone could imagine. Sometimes the worst enemy wasn't the pathogen itself, but our failure to understand it in time. And yet, amidst the horror, there are tales of hope and heroism. Physicians, nurses, and ordinary citizens risked their lives to care for the sick, sometimes with little protection or knowledge. Some communities developed early forms of quarantine, while others relied on folklore and superstition to protect themselves, sometimes successfully, sometimes tragically not. These stories remind us that even when facing invisible death, humanity has consistently sought to fight back, innovate, and survive. Fast forward to today, and the lessons of history remain eerily relevant. Modern pandemics, from SARS to COVID-19, echo the fears, uncertainties, and societal upheavals of past plagues. Our world is connected in ways unimaginable to the people of the 14th century, yet the essential challenge remains the same: understanding a microscopic adversary, adapting quickly, and safeguarding society. As we reflect on the deadliest plagues that shaped humanity, it's impossible not to feel a mixture of awe, fear, and respect. These events remind us of our fragility, the power of nature, and the resilience that has allowed civilizations to endure. From the dusty streets of Constantinople to the vibrant cities of the Americas, from the dark alleys of medieval Europe to modern hospitals, plagues have been a silent architect of human history. They have killed millions, changed economies, toppled empires, and rewritten the course of civilization. Yet humanity survives, learns, and remembers. Now I want you to take a moment and imagine your life as a historian 100 years from now, looking back at today's challenges. Which stories will survive and which will be lost to time? Which plagues, known or unknown, will future generations remember as turning points in their history? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's see which story resonates most with our community. If this journey through humanity's deadliest plagues left you intrigued, fascinated, or even a little unsettled, make sure to like, subscribe, and press the bell icon so you don't miss the next dive into the hidden and dramatic moments of our past. Every story, every plague, every untold chapter awaits you on time's battlefield, where history isn't just remembered, it's relived.